Well, good morning, GM DIYers. Um, this is a 2001 Suburban 1500 with rear auxiliary air, the LT package, so it's pretty much got everything. If it had any more, it'd be an Escalade. Once again, it's year 2001. I can't make any representations about how many model years these things apply to, but what I've been doing for the last couple of days is removing the HVAC system from behind the dash. Just probably the most difficult DIY project I've done on this car. I've gotten to doing more and more of them lately, just because I don't want to deal with my mechanic and trying to get him to do this stuff for thousands of dollars. So I've learned how to do a few things on my own. Anyway, I spent a couple of weeks going through the internet and preparing for this job, just trying to find, sorry about the camera jumping around, I'm dodging stuff here, I'll try to keep it as still as I can. Just preparing for this job, and a lot of the videos are pretty good. But pretty much all of them leave out some kind of important detail about the job. And so I wanted to just, I'm not going to redo all of those, because I think most of the steps of the job are pretty well laid out if you kind of line them all up and look at them separately. But the one thing I want to tell you is this is a big job. It doesn't require any major tools, but there are a couple of specialized things you probably should have. And you need to have a plan. The main thing that I would say, that the mistake that I see a lot of the video guys doing, is they're tearing out stuff on the dash that you just don't need to tear out. As you can see, I've got it totally removed from the vehicle frame, and it's designed like this. You pull the whole dash out in one piece, but there are a lot of wiring harnesses and stuff that none of the videos really mention. Most of the actions on the passenger side, as you can see here, this fuse block right here, pretty much every wiring harness that's in it has to be pulled out, so you can clear the dash back away from the main frame to pull the HVAC unit out. There's some more down here on the floor, really big ones. They are these two here. One of them, as you can see, is a female receptor, and the other one is a male, and they're both attached to their sockets up here on the passenger side column underneath the molding cover. That's why you need to pull that thing off, so that you can get at these things. And they're secured by these locking levers. So you just need to pull those levers back to get those free. And another thing I would recommend is, when you're pulling out these harnesses, you can see I put little numbers on them. Have some little gummy or mailing labels, and just cut them up as you're going and label all those. I think a lot of them you'll be able to figure out just from the configuration of the harness, but I didn't want to take any chances because there's so many of them, and I didn't want to take a chance that I would screw up and put one in the wrong place when I was putting it back together. So another thing that I would say is, when you're taking off the dash cover, everybody that says you gotta pull it out this way toward you is right, because that's the way it's made. You can see the retaining clips right under the windshield line there. That's where they connect. The front part of the dash cover connects to those things, and there's little sliding connectors in the dash that are attached by tension clips to the underside of the dash cover. And the dash cover material is really fragile, so if it's almost guaranteed you're going to break something pulling that thing out, because the connectors just aren't very well designed. And you see the blower vents for your defroster that run along the whole front of the dash assembly. You are definitely going to hang up part of the dash cover when you're trying to pull it out. And so you just got to be kind of careful. I cracked a few of the little grill points on the cover, but I think I can repair them with just a little bit of glue. But it is kind of a it is kind of a tedious process getting that thing off. But you know, once it's off, you can see everything underneath, which that's how it looks when it's all pulled back. Another thing I would say is, as I walk around here, once again, sorry about the movement, here's a steering column that came out, and you can see if you look at it, it's not complex. I mean, it's getting at the bolts at the hardest part. There's two connectors that kind of wrap around the column as they go down to where their points connect, and there's one big one for the ignition system here. That's easy to find. One big wiring block that you have to take out with this bolt here, this is facing that way when you're looking at it from under the dash. And then of course the airbag connector right here. It's got another receptor. I just tossed all the parts in the back here. Another point, if you have one of these cassette modules, that second thing to come out. The first thing is your console, and that is really simple. There's some like 4 bolts in the cavity on the bottom. There's 2 bolts in the front that connect to this right here, and then there's 2 bolts on a plate that are hard to get at, but if you just take those few bolts out, the whole thing comes out in one piece. I've seen people tearing the whole thing apart trying to figure out how it comes out. That's just crazy. I mean, it comes out in literally 2 big pieces, just like this. So that's another thing. Here's the dash cover I've got tossed over the end here. You've seen videos on how to remove this. There's under the fuse panel covers, there's a couple of Phillips head bolts, and they run along the whole outside of the cover. One thing I would say that nobody talks about is, coming back around this front here again, is that if you can see these holes, there's 3 of them right above the airbag that connect. Those are dash cover connecting points, and they're really nasty, really tight. When you're trying to pull the thing off, you really have to get underneath the dash cover with a big screwdriver. You go in the vent port on the passenger side here, and just kind of work them with a big screwdriver to get those things loose, because they're murder to get out, and you could thrash your whole thing. But it's the same deal. Once you get them loose, you pull the whole thing this way to get the whole dash cover loose. I've supported the whole dash assembly with rope, as you can see. That's how the pros do it. I've noticed a few of them do that way. I won't tell you much about the connection points for the subframe, but there's 5 bolts on this side. This one on the top is hidden really well. It's hidden behind you got to go into the vent port to get at it after you've pried the little vent pieces out. And I had a hard time even seeing it, because it was behind an AC line, which I think is, that's one of these right in here. Another thing I want to tell you that's not very detailed in any of the videos that I've seen, again, sorry about the movement here, is when you get in the engine compartment after you've gone through all of the removing the main components, and you're ready to actually disconnect the HVAC feed lines. This one's really easy. The one there, that is the accumulator and the coolant ports for your evaporator, and that's exactly why I was taking out mine, because my evaporator is 18 years old and it just was not getting the job done anymore. So I had to get at it, get rid of it, put in a new one, and taking off the Vortec cover from the top of the ignition assembly here and the carburation assembly to show you that port right there. And you can see the 2 hoses leading up to the auxiliary heater. That's your heater core. Feed tubes go there, and you've got to figure out how you're going to disconnect those couplings, because as you can see, this one right here, it's the old one, it's the original, and it broke when I was trying to free the HVAC system from the dash on the inside. And it's no big deal, I can replace it, the couplings are cheap, but it is a major PETA when you're trying to, because as you can see, that hole is right up against the top of the firewall and the top of the frame there, and trying to get a disconnect tool up in there, it's like impossible. I mean, it's crazy. Fortunately, I had one that was the newer type that my mechanic put in recently, because the old one was in such bad shape. He didn't replace the second one though, which I'm gonna have to do because I broke it. But I saw a video of a guy that just pulled the whole thing out from the inside and cut the tubes off. Great idea, but if you got a Suburban, that ain't gonna work because you have these Y tubes coming out that feed your rear air. And so the only way you're going to get that thing out, and believe me, by the time you've gotten to this point and you're ready to pull that HVAC unit out, you're going to be so PO'd if you find that you can't do it because you're unable to free that coupling. So my recommendation is you get under here and figure out a way to clear those things before you even start the whole effort to remove the HVAC panel. And here it is right here. I finally got the mud out. And it's, you can see it's pretty simple. You know, it comes out pretty clean. There are 7, count them, 7 connection screws that anchor this thing to the firewall. And I'm not going to point them out. Well, I've seen a couple of videos point them out, and they were very helpful. But there's like one here, one there. Some of them are screws, some of them are studs. One here, one down there. Sorry, I'm having a hard time looking at the camera. So one here, one here, one here, one down there, 2 more over here, and one. Can you see my finger? Yeah, 1 there. So 7 total. And once you've gotten everything free and pulled it out, then to get at if you're going to Evaporator, it's right here, and this whole top half of the unit needs to come off for you to get to that. You can remove the heater core if that's the only. Sorry, hit the camera there. If you're only doing the heater core, which is kind of crazy, frankly, if you're taking that thing out, taking all this out just to get at the heater core, but if it's leaking, I guess you've got no choice. You can take it out by just pulling these 2 bolts here, and this cover comes right off, and the heater core is right there. But I'm taking the whole thing apart. You can see I haven't put all the screws back yet, because there's a bunch of screws that you have to take off. I didn't count them, but they're little 7/32 screws. Very easy, pretty easy to find. And you'll know if the thing's hung up somewhere, you'll find the screw that's missing. Get it out, replace your evap core. As you can see, I've already got the new one in there. I'm just doing this video because I wanted to help you guys out, maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I made. So I'm going to go back over here and show you real quick. You're going to need, you can actually do this job with pretty simple tools that most guys are going to have around. A set of open end wrenches is nice. Metric, pretty much all of the ones you're going to need are the metric ones. Channel locks, hammer for banging on parts that are stuck or whatever. Regular socket set, with the exception of the 7/32, they're all metric sizes. Drill if you want to use, to get the things out quick. Here's a couple of things that you're absolutely gonna need. Socket extenders, big ones, because you're not going to be able to get at with a lot of bolts with just your hand or a basic or any kind of basic socket or small extender. Here's another lifesaver that you must have: a universal socket joint, because you're going to be trying to get at bolts that are in weird angles that this little piece here is going to save you a couple $100 from the cuss jar while you're trying to get at these bolts that are just murder to find. Here's another thing you're going to need: a set of deep sockets, because there's a couple of bolts that are on studs that are really long, particularly the shroud that covers the base of the steering column. That I could not have got that thing out without those deep sockets. So those are a couple of things you're going to need. Another thing I would point out, so you can see on my driver's seat here, I've got a bunch of baggies with fasteners in them. Oh, what a concept. bag up and label your fasteners from particular areas as you're taking this stuff apart. Otherwise, you're never going to figure out where they all go back, because there's dozens of different sized and kind fasteners in this job. So getting them out is not the hard part. Putting them back, figuring out where you took them out from, putting them back is the hard part. And so you definitely want to do this as you're doing your disassembly. Bag up your fasteners, like I've got dash top right here. So that's all those screws that go in the dash cover. HVAC housing, these are the little 7/32 screws that seal up the HVAC unit. Steering column bolts, those are all the things around the steering column. And I'm going to point out another thing. Looking in for this is the steering column area where I pulled the column out. It's an intimidating job, but it isn't really that hard. Only things I would point out that none of the videos mention is, depending on the model of your car, you're going to have a whole bunch of crap underneath your steering column. Wiring, I've got this thing that's like an audio piece that all these harnesses hook into. They're sitting in a rack right here. All that stuff has to come out or come loose so that you can actually get at the bolts and stuff that secure the column in place. So you got to be kind of careful and specific to your model, but all that stuff's got to come out so that you can freely get at the steering column components. The other thing that I would say that none of the videos mention is the only thing that's fixed on the car that you have to disconnect from the steering column, other than the wiring and the wiring stuff, is the gear shifter linkage. And that is very simple to do, but nobody says it. There is a sheath that goes in a little, that's it right there, goes in a little clip that's welded on this side of the steering column, on the right side, and it's secured to that thing with a little horseshoe clip. It's in one of these bags here. Where is it? There it is, right there. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's there it is, a little horseshoe clip. You just pry that out with a screwdriver, and then you can see this little piece here. It's got little pinch clips that hold it in place in that bracket. And all you have to do is get some leverage in there and push those pinch clips together, and then the thing pushes right through, forward, right through the connector. Then there's the end of the cable. It's right here. You can see this piece. It's connected to a little ball joint that actually connects to the steering linkage, the shifter linkage. You just pull that thing out, pry it off, and it just comes right off with a little screwdriver or whatever. Very simple. So it's really not that bad, but you got to know what you're trying to do, and that's why I'm telling you right now, that's the thing you need to do. And one other thing, point of interest, a game plan. Make yourself one, because you can see I made a game plan before I started, but I've been changing it as I've gone through the project to make corrections where I found stuff that wasn't correct or was incomplete. And I'm going to keep working on it until I finish the job, so that I've got a total, complete written outline of what I did and in what order I did it. So this is basically reduce this job to 5 steps. First is removing your center console. Second step, I changed these steps. Remove your dash cover. That's the second thing you got to do. Each one of these is kind of a big job in itself, but if you attack this with some logic and knowledge of how everything's put together, it'll be a lot better for you. Step 3 is removal of the steering column. That's really kind of necessary if you're thinking you're going to try to pull it off without pulling that thing out. Don't. It helps, as you can see, it helps a lot having that space cleared out. You can just see and move everything around so much more easily. So what I say, 1 is remove the console, 2 is remove the dash cover, 3 is remove the steering column, 4, attach the dash subframe assembly from the passenger compartment subframing. So as you can see, the whole dash is one big assembly, but you need to know where the contact points are. You could see, I didn't take out any of this stuff. I saw guys with videos that were taking out the instrument cluster and taking out the radio and their climate control thing, monkeying with these vents. I mean, that's where you get into trouble. All that stuff is just fine where it is. It'll be a little heavier, but not much. And it's so much less of a hassle if you just leave it all in place. Airbag stays in place, all of that stuff. It's just one big piece. There's like not that many connections either. There's four over here, which you've heard about. There's one hidden up behind the dash to the upper left of the steering column attachment down there. There's four on the other side and one hidden. I already talked about that a little earlier. There's all of these sliding. Let me see if I can get the camera up there, give you a better look. I think there's four of these, yeah, right there, that slip in to these, that are attached at these bolt holes here. There's a couple of hidden ones down here where these curvatures are. Got to go down. There's a 15mm bolt down there. There's that center post, which you can see I've got it loose right there. But there's other videos that talk about that, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. And so, you know, the reason I'm making this now is because I wanted to make sure I was going to do it right, and not throw up my hands and give up and go cry into my mechanic. And I did it, and you can do it too. It's a big job, very detailed, lots of things to think about and do. But if you're patient and careful, you can do this big DIY project. Might take you a couple of days because you'll run into problems and roadblocks that are going to take you more time than you expected to cover. That one was the bad one for me, disconnecting those darn heater core couplings. It was murder getting up in that, but they were the push tab type, and my main time suck was I thought that you needed one of those release tools to get them off, and so I was fiddling around with that for hours before I finally figured out I was dealing with a different kind of connector. So that's why I said save yourself some time and figure that out early, because you're going to have to get those things free in order to pull out this unit and get to your holy grail, which is freaking evap core or the heater core. So that's it, guys. I hope that you find this information helpful, and you can get her done. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Okay, sorry, just like an addendum to my previous video, and I'm sure there's tons of stuff that I left out that some of my viewers would have preferred that I put in, but I think that information's out there. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to put in here the details that caused me the most trouble, so that with the expectation be the same for you. Right here is that's the end of the steering column that's attached to the bolt that connects the column to your suspension steering components and all that. There's only one. It's just one bolt, and once that's free and you've taken out the other bolts, which are located, see, this is upside down, but you can see there's two 15mm bolts that hold it to the dash frame, the dash subframe. This is there's two 15mm bolts that hold it a little further down the column, and then you got to go out in the engine compartment and pull that bolt that connects that at the end. The only thing I wanted to mention was that's the bolt that holds that on there is kind of a one-piece deal. It's like a flange that wraps around the post. The side, there's only one of those sides of that bolt that turns. It's the nut side, not the bolt side. The bolt side is welded to the clip that goes on there, and it doesn't turn. So if like me, you go to that bolt just thinking, oh, that's got to be the easy one, right? Wrong. It doesn't turn at all. So the one you want to turn is the nut side. So that's one detail. And the other thing I planned to mention and didn't is that I captured this as a still from a video of a guy that was very nicely showed where the connectors are for the that hold the HVAC unit to the firewall. And as you can see, I actually pinpointed all of the locations, so that would be easier for me to find them when I was out there in the engine compartment trying to take them all out. And guess what? It really worked. Saved me a ton of time. And you might want to think about doing something like that yourself. Anything you can do to kind of anticipate problems and save yourself some time, it's worth it. So good luck, and thanks for watching.